I have previously mentioned the great Paleoproterozoic Snowball Earth glaciation that was triggered by oxygenation of the atmosphere 2.5 billion years ago. We have known for a while that there was a major glaciation then, but not how extensive it was. One critical line of evidence was paleomagnetic measurements to track the position of the magnetic poles. These show that glaciers reached all the way to the equator, even pouring glacial diamictite into the tropical seas. Clearly, if glaciers were calving in the tropics, it must have been pretty cold. The story got more interesting during examination of other diamictite deposits from much younger in the rock record, particularly the Sturtian glaciation at 720 million years ago and the Marinoan glaciation about 635 million years ago. These also had evidence for tropical glaciers. We see piles of glacial marine sediment full of glacial dropstones, interbedded with iron formations, notably not banded, and topped by a layer of carbonate rocks called a cap carbonate. The cap carbonates are full of stromatolitic trace fossils and are thought to have been precipitated quickly in shelf-edge stromatolite reefs. The cap carbonates also include crystal fans that indicate rapid deposition of carbonate on the sea floor. So how to explain this? Well, Joe Kirschvink at Caltech floated the idea many years ago of a global ice-covered planet to explain many features of this stratigraphy. Later, Paul Hoffman at Harvard offered up a series of tests of this snowball Earth hypothesis. The glacial deposits are, of course, the products of glacial ice, transporting rock into the ocean when the snowball is initially established, or during times when the snowball does not fully cover the Earth. Moving ice requires a hydrologic system of evaporating ocean water, vapor transport, snowfall, and formation of ice, something that requires that the ice cap is not a hard snowball, at least not all the time. Dropstones also require that icebergs can calve and transport rocks some way offshore. One of Hoffman's tests was to determine if the glacial deposits reached the equator. He summarized paleomagnetic evidence that suggests that they did, and therefore that the Earth must have been substantially iced over in order to sustain ice streams reaching the ocean in the tropics. If the ice cap is fairly continuous, the ocean trapped under it will quickly lose oxygen and become mostly anoxic, like the Archean Ocean before 2.5 billion years ago. However, oxygen can still enter the ocean either through leads, that is, cracks in the ice, or through meltwater flowing from land under the ice into the ocean. This Proterozoic-like ocean with an oxygenated top and an anoxic bottom sets up the conditions to deposit iron formations. Indeed, Hoffman found iron formations in each of the snowball events. As noted previously, these deposits are not classic banded iron formations as seen in the Paleoproterozoic, but they do stain the glacial rocks brick red or even purple. The theory is that the ice-covered ocean becomes charged with CO2 that is derived from volcanism on the sea floor, and that gets dissolved in ocean water under the ice. Some CO2 leaks through those leads in the ice into the atmosphere. Eventually, enough CO2 leaks out of the subglacial ocean to raise atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations enough to cause rapid melting of the ice sheets. When the ice is gone, well, the ocean gives up its dissolved CO2 to the atmosphere, and the carbonate dissolved in seawater is rapidly deposited, forming the cap carbonate and crystal fans on the shallow shelves. In support of this theory, Hoffman found cap carbonates associated with glacial sediments worldwide. A long-standing problem, of course, has been to show that the glacial deposits are really globally synchronous. High-precision uranium-lead dates show that the glacial events are 10 million years to more than 60 million years long, so there's a lot of slack for saying that the ice growth started at the same time everywhere. We are helped somewhat by a very dramatic change in carbon isotopes of carbonates that I mentioned in an earlier lecture. These must be global isotopic changes since they're huge, with carbon isotopes swinging from plus 10 per mil to minus 10 per mil, far too large to be explained by local basin effects. These carbon isotope swings have been used to correlate snowball Earth events from place to place and support the notion that they're approximately globally synchronous. But still, the fact is that the snowball events cover an awful long period of time. Many things can happen in 60 million years, after all. For comparison, the Pleistocene ice sheets have lasted only 2.5 million years and have involved 100 glacial advances and retreats. The snowball deposits hardly seem thick enough to represent periods 30 times as long as the present glaciations. If our chronologies are right, the snowball events must have involved long periods without much sediment deposition, perhaps under a hard snowball of mile-thick ice. Ice is also very effective at eroding bedrock, so some of the missing time might reflect massive erosion of the snowball sediments. So how does a planet get a global-spanning ice cap? It's also pretty hard to figure that out. Some authors have suggested that the ice began to grow due to uptake of carbon dioxide by silicate weathering that draws down greenhouse gases and cools the Earth. Others have suggested a mechanism similar to what seems to have occurred during the Great Oxygenation event at 2.5 billion years ago, namely a runaway process of algal growth, burial, increase in free oxygen in the atmosphere, and then that subsequently destroys greenhouse gases and causes glaciation. Still, other possibilities are a wobble in Earth's orbit, a favorable continental configuration to get extensive equatorial ice growth, such as continents near the equator, or a combination of a number of these factors that together initiate global cooling. Snowball Earth is notable because the metazoan radiation happens right in the middle of it. We will get to the evidence in the next video, but suffice it to say that there is evidence that metazoans got their start in, if not before, the Sturtian glaciation about 720 million years ago. Either the Earth was not in a hard snowball with a continuous ice cover, or there were other ways to make a living as a single-celled metazoan eukaryote. There may have been wind-open leads, for example, in the ice, with sufficient open water to keep animals happy. Or, as Hoffman et al. Suggest, there may have been dust clumps called criconite that created nutrient-rich melt pools on the top of the ice sheet, where the animals could thrive.